Hello, here we go again. This time we're going to add the legs to the body. So take your leg pattern and draw it out onto your fabric piece. So you can see I've got the two pieces on my fabric. Now I'm just going to cut around the edge, leaving that small seam allowance. So here we have our two legs cut out with the small seam allowance, and I've also cut out the foot soles and the foot sides with the interfacing to match. Leave that horseshoe shape uncut for the moment. So this is the foot side, and you can see that that's the right side, and the wrong side has got the interfacing attached to it. And there you can still see your pen mark through the interfacing. Then you just need to have another little snip around the outside edge because your interfacing is probably now larger. So just snip off back to a good seam allowance. And then now you can cut through that horseshoe section. Nice little seam allowance, doesn't need to be too big, all the way around. So after you've cut around that horseshoe shape, you need to take your really sharp scissors and just cut some snips along that inner curve all the way through, just up to your pen line. And then that way you can stretch that inner horseshoe out straight, which is going to fit on the lower part of the leg. So take your leg fabric and have right side facing, and just place a small little dot in the centre of that section, and the same on the horseshoe area of the side foot, and then match them together, both right sides facing. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take hold of that horseshoe and pull it flat, and that way it will stretch out onto that lower section of the leg. Put a couple of pins in place. And do the same for the other side. Stretch that out. So now it will lay nice and flat. So now you can see that curved horseshoe shape has fitted nicely onto the straight section on the foot. Okay, so I've sewn along where the pins were. You can see it on the other side there. What you have now is the nice top of the foot. So now I'm just going to neaten that edge. So grab your pinking shears and just snip away at that section that you've just sewn. Okay, so you've got a nice pinked edge all the way along your seam. So take the side seams that you've just sewn and just flatten them out between your finger and thumb. Just open them up, flatten them out, give them a little press. And then turn the foot right side together and just match those two seams. And then place the pin in, keeping both those seams open and flat. And then match the heel together. And then the leg. So pop your pin in through the marked line, but then just turn it over to make sure that it is hitting the marked line on the other side as well. And work your way all the way up the back side of that leg. Okay, so when all your pins are in, you're going to sew along that back edge seam of the leg. When you get to the ankle section, just go backwards and forwards a little bit. That just reinforces that area there, because that's where a lot of the stress is going to be when you're stuffing. So that seam now is nicely sewn in place, and we're just going to grab our pinking shears and just pink the edge of that seam. So now we're going to attach the foot side to the foot sole. So you need to find the centre points of the sole of the foot. So you've probably got your mark on the other side. Now, best way to do it is just to pop a pin through so it comes out the other side, and just with your pen just make a little mark on the toe end. And on the heel end, and then you know where your centre points are. Then you're going to line up that top foot, so the front of the top foot, onto the front of the sole, which is the fatter end of the sole. So line the two pen marks together. And just put a pin in, and then go to that back seam on the heel and just open that seam out flat, and then match that to that back little dot as well, and pop a pin in, remembering to keep that seam open and flat. And then what you're basically doing is you're just working your way all the way around, pinning. It does fit, it does take a little time to get it all in. I tend to start at the top and just work my way around. We'll put loads of pins in. The more pins the better. And once you've put your pins in, you might choose to actually tack it as well prior to sewing it. That's entirely up to you whether you want to tack before you sew. You might need to tweak the pin placements a couple of times just to get that sole of foot fed in. That's fine, keep going backwards and forwards until it does fit. Okay, so yeah, we got lots of pins in there. You need a lot in to keep it all nice and flat. Like I said, if you want to add a tacking stitch through it, just so that you can remove the pins prior to sewing, then that's absolutely fine. I don't tend to, I just go straight in at it. Now when I start my sewing stitches, I start from the side of the foot. I find that that's just the easiest place to put that under my machine foot and start from the side and sew all the way along. So you've sewn all the way around your foot, and now you are going to just snip away that seam allowance with your pinking shears. Okay, so you've now pinked all the way around, and now we're going to turn it right side out. So yeah, lovely little leg with a little foot attached at the bottom. Nice little shaped sole. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to flatten those seams out. So take your dotting tool and work all the way around the inside seams. And I start at the bottom of the foot on that heel line there, and just press out the seams all the way around. Really push into that toe. Okay, so seams all pressed out. It's now time to start stuffing that leg, but it is quite a long way down from the top of the leg down to the foot. So what I like to do is I like to actually roll the top of the leg down to basically make like a little boot. Just makes it much easier for stuffing. So now it's turned down to a little boot. That is just so much easier to stuff rather than trying to push the stuffing through the whole length of the leg. So you have a little boot to stuff with. Lovely. So now the foot and leg is ready to stuff, and I like to use these hemostat scissors. It's so much easier to actually just grab your stuffing in them and poke it in to the area that you're going to stuff. Much easier than just using your fingers. Really get that stuffing pushed in firmly to that toe end. So just keep going and just keep continuing to stuff all the way up through the leg. She's got a nice sort of calf shape to the back of her leg there, so really sort of poke and prod around with that stuffing to get that nice calf shape appearance. You can see there's a definite in and out there at the top of her leg. So push the stuffing down at the top there, so you know that you've got a little bit of a recess for actually closing the top of the leg together. So open that back seam out at the back and then just position it so that it's centre front to the front of the leg. So just put a centre pin in there and then just grab your hemostats and just sort of push that stuffing back down in towards the leg on the sides. And then just place some pins running through the top edge. So just check your leg, make sure that it's nice and smooth and that you can't feel any lumps or bumps anywhere. It should be really firmly stuffed so it's nice and solid. Could use it as a hammer. Okay, so continuing with the stuffing, we're now going to stuff the body, but it's just the top of the body that we're stuffing. So take smallish amounts, you don't want to take anything too lumpy and big. And using your fingers, just push the stuffing up. I start at the back first and just push it up towards the neck edge. Turn it over and do some in the front. You want to get it really pushed in under that neck edge. You can get it pushed in under there, that will help to camouflage any of your stitching. And the same with the back, just push it up into that neck edge. So using your finger, just really push it into that shoulder area, make that nice and firm. You can see I'm just grabbing the stuffing and pushing it up and spreading it in between my fingers. So just pushing it out with my fingers to get it nicely positioned. So just check her over, make sure that she's all nicely evenly stuffed. So it's basically just the top half of the body, and then what you can do is take your dull needle and just poke and prod that shoulder area just to make sure that you've got enough stuffing where the shoulder edges are. And you can see now that she's expanded quite considerably, so where the material is quite stretchy, it does grow as you stuff. So for some reason I've lost the video clip that I did of showing you how to tack the top edge of the leg. So looking at this photograph, you can see that I've tacked it, but I've got it at an angle, so it's going downwards. It's on a slant, so you need to make sure that you do this slant so that the legs will fit nicely onto the body. Okay, so now we've got the legs pinned onto the body. It's time to sew them on. Now you can just do it by sewing one leg at a time, so just pinning one leg on, but I prefer to put both legs on at the same time and work that way. Now it can be a little bit awkward. I tend to use my middle finger and hold it at the back to keep the leg in place, and then stitch along that front edge. I'm just grabbing my other glasses because it's close work. I'm blind. Okay, so I'm going to do a really small mattress stitch. So if you don't know what a mattress stitch is, just have a quick Google of it. But basically what you're taking a tiny little stitch on the leg, and then parallel to that, a tiny little stitch. Oh, that's a tiny little stitch on the body, tiny little stitch on the leg. And you just keep going backwards and forwards, and these are parallel stitches. So just keep working all the way along that front section of the leg. The beauty of a mattress stitch is that as you're sewing you can keep your stitches quite loose, but then when you pull on the thread you can actually tighten it, and then once you've tightened it, it doesn't come undone. So I find this a great little stitch to use for attaching limbs to body. To jump over to the second leg, I just turn her over and just run a couple of little stitches on the inside of that seam. And here we are, just finishing off the last of the front sections on both legs. Okay, so front sections of the legs are sewn on nice and tight. You can go over it and do a second row of stitching if you want, just to secure it even further. It's entirely up to you. And here you can see that I've just attached my thread back to the centre point inside the leg, ready to start sewing again. Okay, so now I'm going to continue to stuff her back and get that filled as much as I possibly can. When you found the two centre points, just pop a pin in place. Okay, so pin is in place in the middle. I've got room for more stuffing, but I'm going to put that in towards the end of the sewing line. You don't want to overstuff at this point, otherwise you're not going to get, you're not going to have enough room to get your stitches done. Now it's time to pin that back leg into position. This is a little bit difficult for me to hold it up in front of the camera and sew at the same time. I'll do my best. And now that it's all pinned in place and you're happy with the positioning, you can start sewing that back section of the leg onto the body. The more you sew along, the easier it becomes. just taking the pins out just to rejig it a little bit more, because what you don't want is you don't want a harsh corner edge, so you just need to make sure that that is going to be smooth in that area there. And so we'll just fasten off the thread here on that section of the leg. Lovely. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a little bit more stuff into her bum cheek, the side of the leg that we've done. So grab your hemostats and just stuff a little bit more into that area. She needs to have a nice little cheeky bum. So really get it pushed into that corner. So don't overstuff on the other side of the bum cheek that you haven't sewn yet. We're going to leave a little gap in the stitches just so that we can stuff that final bum cheek. Okay, so we're going to close the gap and pin in place this remaining leg side. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave that little gap there after we've sewn so that we can add some more stuffing in. Okay, so I've closed up the little centre gap there in the middle, and I'm now going to continue with my mattress stitch all the way along. Okay, so I can just continue along to where the back seam is and just do a couple of stitches just to sort of fasten that off, because you don't want that stitch running. And we're just going to add some more bum cheek stuffing in through that little gap there. Bottoms up, I say. So when you feel like you've stuffed enough, you're now going to just finish off by closing that gap. Just finishing off this last little bit to do. Fasten off and sink your tail. Okay, so her legs are all nicely sewn on, and as you can see, she can sit and she can bend. Now with an unpicker, just remove all those tack-in stitches that were in the body. Okay, so just take your doll needle again and pull and prick and prod some more of the stuff in at the front of the legs and at the back of the legs. Okay, legs sewn on, so nicely sewn on at the front and at the back. So yeah, so legs sewn on.